Welcome to Victoria's Nirvana with your host, Dr. Victoria Ravenwood, where it's all about empowering the sisterhood. It's time to free our inner Amazon, honor the feminine, and change this world.
Hello, welcome to the new Victoria's Nirvana, updated and facelift with a new focus on feminism and women and changing this world and honoring the feminine and feminine spirituality and awakening our inner Amazon. I think it's time. I think the world is ready for it. Judging from the Game of Thrones activity last night and the cheering on of all these badass female characters saving the world, it's great to see it getting out there in the mindset of the public in big ways, along the lines of Star Wars and all these different films having these characters, and they're doing pretty good at not objectifying. That kind of still slips in a little bit, but I think a lot of these big budgeted movies are doing a pretty good job at it. It can get hard. The whole issue can get hard. I was speaking with a woman who wanted to write about her culture and the women in her culture, and I could see how much she was getting very exhausted and tired and weighed down by it. And I know that she has a lot of wonderful things to offer the world. She writes a lot of poetry and has a lot of great ideas for novels. But I see her a lot of times putting this aside to address these feminist topics, and it kind of starts taking over her work, topics of race and topics of feminism, and it can become somewhat draining. And as Virginia Woolf had once said, so much is lost to our society and culture because women spend so much time and so much of their creative time addressing all this oppression and sexism in their work. So they don't get to freely just create what they would like to create, because they spend so many words and pages and of their art addressing and reacting to and trying to overcome this sexism and this oppression. And that's what I was seeing happening in her work, and I've seen it in other people's work as well. And I've been very mindful in my own work to not allow that to happen. When I first started feminism, I came across that quote from Virginia Woolf, and it always stayed with me, and I'm glad that it did, because there was a time in the beginning where all of my ideas and scripts were about that, were about facing that and destroying the patriarchy. And while that's great and we should do that, we don't want to lose ourselves in it. We don't want to lose ourselves in that work of trying to fight something and fight an oppression and fight a sexism, because we want to still bring the gifts that we have for who we are out there as well. So we don't want to get weighed down by this. Having a message, it's good to have a message and have those things come through our work, but also being able to do the work that we're here to do without being reactive, without being drained by oppression or sexism, and feeling like all our work has to be about fighting that. Because we do have other things that we're here to give. We have other things that we're here to do. So part of this is I want to empower women, and I want to empower them to speak up. I want to empower them to fight these oppression and racism and sexism, but also to honor who they are, to get back to the core of who they are, so they can express their gifts, gifts that are above and beyond and outside of all this oppression and sexism and racism. Gifts that are core to who they are and the beauty that they have to share. And it's very important that that voice comes out into the world. I studied Emily Dickinson's work in a poetry class at Harvard, and it was wonderful because so much of her poetry is just her inner beauty and her inner process and who she is. And she was a recluse and spent a lot of time alone in nature, so maybe she was somewhat shielded from a lot of this because she was just by herself a lot and isolated. And she allowed her creativity to really come through and shine. And it has blessed so many people's lives for so many years. And people still talk about maybe finding more of her poetry that wasn't published, that's hidden in an attic somewhere, because she had hidden and bound together a bunch of poems, and she wanted them all destroyed when she died, and her sister decided to publish them instead and piece together a lot of poetry that she had sent out to her friends. So she was expressing her true self in it and allowing it to really come forth. And if she had faced a lot of racism and oppression and sexism right in her face, I don't know how much might have been lost, how much of her work may have been pulled in a completely different direction. So it's good to have causes, it's good to want to get the messages out, but you also don't want to lose who you are and what you want to say and the beauty of what you have to say. I saw it in myself, and I've seen it in so many other women, time and time again, and you can kind of see it in their face when they start to get a little tired of it, and there's this sense within them that there's something they really want to say, that they want this to finally be over, so the oppression and the racism and the sexism, so they can be themselves and they can be free to be themselves and do what they're here to do. And you can't wait for that. You have to take the time to express what is in you and what is in your heart as well. You have to take a break from the fight. You have to take a break from patriarchy. You have to take a break from all of these oppressive things that may be going on in society and get back to the core of who you are and honor yourself. Write something crazy, write something silly, write something beautiful, switch to poetry, go paint something. Not everything has to be about the fight. Not everything has to be about changing everything. Just expressing yourself can be a radical act. Expressing your true self can be a radical act. Not reacting. Not making the oppressor or patriarchy the subject of every single one of your works or talks or ideas can be a radical act. So there needs to be a balance, and I see how wonderful it is that there are stronger female characters out there, and there are a lot of feminists who are critiquing these characters, and yes, there are issues, there are some things that are still objectifying, there are things that, are still not perfect with these characters, but it's a good start, and it's going in the right direction. And there's only so much one person can do. It's good, I think, to get these things into our stories. And it's great for men to be exploring these things, because they're not coming from a place of oppression and fighting against something. They're just trying to create and be a little bit more mindful about what they're doing. And that itself is wonderful. And women need to also be free to create and try stuff that isn't associated all the time with whatever oppression they are facing in their life, so they can really express who they are, and their whole life is not about the fight. Too many beautiful pieces of art and writing and work and talks and just being in the world is just stifled so much because women are focused, overly focused at times, on fighting patriarchy and the oppression, that they're not expressing their true selves. So it's really important to get in touch with that, to take the time for yourself and give yourself that permission to write, to create, to be in the world without that being your main focus. To go and do something for yourself and enjoy the beauty of it, enjoy the experience of it without having to bring it back to whatever problems or oppressions or sexisms or racisms you're having in your life. You deserve to have moments that are about you, that are freeing your creative self from within and expressing that, expressing you, rather than always being responding or reacting to patriarchy and oppression. There needs to be a balance between it all. So it's great that these badass characters have come out quite a bit lately into the mainstream culture, and a lot of women have been arguing and fighting for that, and it is really paying off, and things do pay off. It does work, it does help, it does make change, and it's so wonderful to see that. But by no means allow that to overtake who you are or your creativity or what you have to say. Be yourself, express yourself, get in touch with what's deep inside of you to speak and to say and to give to the world, so that the world has this beauty and this other level from women, where it's not just about fighting patriarchy, fighting monsters, but another level of personality, of thought, of discourse, of creativity, that women's expression can get there out there in its fullest sense of the word. And the world can be renewed and receive a different view of things. So it's just some food for thought to make sure that you really are giving time and voice to your true self in all of this. Because I know so many women want to fight the good fight, they want to make change, and they want to do all these wonderful things in the world. But let's just not lose your voice. There have been so many wonderful women who have managed to create beautiful things. Read some of Emily Dickinson's poems and see it. And then, yes, Virginia Woolf did a great job with a lot of her short stories and her novels in addressing oppression, but she still found a way to put her true self in there and wrote other things that weren't necessarily on that topic. There are a lot of different women who have offered something very unique to the world that has really touched the world. So I like to think of Mary Shelley and Emily Dickinson are two that come to mind, who really put something out there that was fun and unique to them and their expression, rather than always being in reaction or response to the oppression and the sexism in their lives. So give that some food for thought. We're going to have some new topics coming along in this revamped version of Victoria's Nirvana. So stay tuned, and I hope you join us next week. Stay fierce.
Thank you for listening to Victoria's Nirvana. Tell your friends to listen and visit victoriasnirvana.com to subscribe and join the Nirvana Sisterhood.